Hey guys, so today I want to take you down memory lane. I want to show you a recipe from my childhood. This is a sweet cottage cheese ball or dumpling called Túrógombóc in Hungarian. So this is like a fluffy ball of cottage cheese that's boiled and then it's tossed in a little sweet breadcrumb topping, and it's often served with like a sour cream sauce. But in my childhood, my mom used to make this and serve it with jam. And my favorite way to have it was with either sour cherry jam or apricot jam. So I've always loved apricot jam. It's something that goes back to my childhood. My grandma Annuska used to make apricot jam. My mom's best friend Eva, who I called Eva Neni, which is like Aunt Eva, she also made apricot jam. And a few years ago, I discovered a lady in the Great Market Hall here in Budapest who makes a particular apricot jam that's flavored with lavender and honey. So I want to show you this version of apricot jam to serve alongside the túrógombóc. I think this is a unique pairing that really goes well with the túrógombóc, especially because I love how apricots have this sweet and yet tart flavor. I think it really helps cut through the richness of the cottage cheese dumplings. So let me show you how to make my version of túrógombóc. These cottage cheese dumplings with apricot jam flavored with lavender and honey. Okay, so for túrógombóc we of course need túró, and here in Hungary it's so readily available. It looks like this. It's very much like cottage cheese. It doesn't have as much whey on it as cottage cheese in America. If you're making this recipe in the States, look for cottage cheese or farmer's cheese and just make sure that you've drained off any whey. I recommend making this with farmer's cheese though, because you won't have to do what I'm going to do now, which is breaking up the large curds. And you can also do this in a food processor just to get it even creamier. But the idea is that you don't want to have those large lumps, those large curds. Oh, and that looks pretty good. It's nice and fine. So the túrógombóc recipe that I'm going to show you today is based on my mom's. And her recipe starts with beating the egg whites and then folding them into the mixture at the end. And this makes a lighter, fluffier túrógombóc or cottage cheese dumpling. And I think this is a really good recipe in that sense, because many times, especially here in Hungary, if you order this at a restaurant, you often end up getting this really leaden, heavy ball. And I think the idea is that you want something that's fluffy and light and airy, so it doesn't seem as rich as it really is. So let's get started with beating the egg whites. Pretty good. So I'm just going to add the egg whites back into the original bowl. And now I'm going to switch to the beater blade. And I have some softened butter that I'm going to add. Okay, I'm going to add the superfine sugar and cream it with the butter. Okay, I'm going to do some scraping just to make sure it's not stuck to the sides of the bowl. And I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And the egg yolks. And now I'm going to cream this all together. And now I'm going to add the cottage cheese, or túró. And I'm just going to add all of it at once. Okay, and some more beating. then I'm going to give it a scrape just to make sure it's incorporated. I'm going to let it go for a little longer, and then I'll spoon in the cream of wheat, which is a really interesting ingredient in túrógombóc, but it's traditional. It's what gives it that fluffy texture and holds everything together. So just adding my cream of wheat. Okay, I'm going to give it another scrape. And at this point, I'm going to take this off of the machine and fold in the egg whites. Okay, so I like to fold this in 2 additions. So the túrógombóc mixture is now ready to be formed into the dumplings, the balls. Most Hungarian recipes say to make them walnut size, or in my opinion, I would say like make them golf ball size. You can make them whatever size you want, but in my opinion, it's easiest when you have an ice cream scoop, because this makes the perfect shape and you know everyone's getting like the same amount. So just like this. And I'm adding them to my tray, which is lined with some parchment paper. Just like this. And now I've got to scrape it all together to get out that one last dumpling. Okay, so now we have 20. Yep, that's good. We have 20 dumplings. I'm going to give this a rest for about an hour because you want to let all the ingredients kind of absorb, especially the cream of wheat needs to do its absorbing. And in the meanwhile, I'm going to get started on the jam. So I have a pound of apricots here, and I'm just going to take out the pits, then cut them into like little wedges or little pieces, add them to my pot, and then eventually put them on the stove. And of course, you want to work with ripe apricots. These are really nice, beautiful, ripe apricots. I think that's what I love about apricots the most, is that when they're so ripe, it's almost like they're jam on the inside. There was a time when I used to make extract from the apricot kernels. That's how you get like an almond flavored extract. Okay. And usually what I like to do is kind of like quarter the halves, so you end up getting 8 pieces out of each apricot. I don't puree it, or I don't really like to mush it up. I like to have the chunky pieces and like that runny texture with the chunky pieces in it. When I was a kid, I used to eat apricot jam with waffles. That was my favorite way to enjoy it. Now as an adult, I love jam, and it's actually my weakness, so I avoid buying jam as much as possible because otherwise I would eat the entire jar. But in summer, it's like you can't avoid it, because if you have some overripe fruit hanging around in the kitchen, usually what I do is end up turning it into jam, so there's no way I can get away from it. And I like to add a little bit of lemon juice, because this will help fix the color. If you put your jam away for like a month or 2 in your pantry, for example, like if you're making preserves, you want to add lemon juice because it'll keep the apricot jam from going kind of this weird brown. I would say the juice of half a lemon, or a little less than that, is fine. And of course, This jam is flavored with lavender and honey. Now the honey I'm going to add at the end because I don't want to destroy the raw quality of the honey, but I am going to add the sugar and the lavender buds now and then put this on the stove. So I'm using super fine sugar, about 1/3 of a cup, and I've got a teaspoon of lavender buds. And this is culinary lavender, which is specifically used for cooking and baking. So I've got the jam, or I should say I have the makings of the jam on medium-high heat. Just going to give them a toss. And I'm also preheating the skillet because we're going to make a crumb coating for the dumplings. So it's actually very traditional with these Hungarian dumpling recipes, these kind of dessert dumplings, is that they're coated in breadcrumbs. I've kind of given it a twist because I'm going to also toast some almonds and then continue with the breadcrumb topping. So this will give a little bit of interest to the dumplings and kind of connect them to the apricot jam a little bit more because you'll have this kind of almondy flavor that's reminiscent of like the apricot kernel. I'm going to toast the almonds. So this is just chopped, slivered, blanched almonds. And the almonds are quickly browning. And so to cool them off, I'm going to add butter. And now I'm going to add the breadcrumbs. And you're going to keep on toasting the breadcrumbs until they're a little bit darker than the natural color they were. And as you can see, it's toasting nicely from the bottom. Give it a stir every now and then. Okay, I'm going to turn off the heat because these crumbs are done. So to make sure that the crumbs don't brown anymore, I'm going to add them to this plate. And this will be the plate that I end up rolling the dumplings in afterwards. And in the meantime, I'm going to bring this pot of water to a boil. I'm going to lower the heat on the jam just a little bit. Okay, so my water has come up to a boil. And I'm going to add just like not even a tablespoon of salt. Give that a stir. And in the meantime, I've shut the jam off. It reached a really nice consistency, and once that's a little cooler, I'll add the honey to that. So the secret with these dumplings is that you put them into the hot water, they kind of end up sinking to the bottom, but then they float to the top when they're done. And that should be about like 5 minutes, that process. So usually what I like to do is I'll cook 5 at a time because I don't want to overcrowd the pot. So I'm going to start adding them to the boiling water. Okay, and I'm going to give that about 5 minutes. Okay, and I'm going to remove them to the breadcrumb topping that I made earlier, and then give those a toss in the breadcrumbs. And here you can also use your hands if you like, and then I'm going to put them onto the plate over here. Okay. And I'm going to add 5 more to the boiling water. And 5 minutes. I can finally shut the fan off. I wasn't able to get all the dumplings to fit onto this large plate, but that's okay because I made my own serving. So I figured since I have 20, it's great to have 3 per person, let's say. And I still have some leftover breadcrumbs, which is great because Hungarians love extra breadcrumbs on their dumplings. And since there's almonds in here too, you don't want to let this go to waste. You want to put some more on them. And the tradition is to put powdered sugar on them as well. So just for a nod to tradition, a little bit of dusting. And I have my jam, which is slightly cooled now. And to this, I'm going to add about a 1/4 cup of honey. Now this is the flourish, the crown on these beautiful jewels. I'm trying to encourage some pooling to happen. There we go. So I'm really excited to try these túrógombóc, and the jam is also something that's really making my mouth water right now because I love apricot jam. Okay. They're nice and fluffy on the inside. You know, interestingly, what really hits me is the toasted almonds. They make such a difference in the breadcrumb topping. I think that was a great addition. The apricot jam is really nice and tart, but then you have the sweetness of the honey that just kind of comes in as an afternote, which I really like. And the lavender is not overpowering at all. It just gives it a really pleasant floral flavor. So although I'm making this túrógombóc in the middle of summer, this is one dish that's popular all year round here in Hungary. So take the opportunity to make them, especially when apricots are in season. So I hope you try making these cottage cheese dumplings or túrógombóc. Let me know what you think about them in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.